My name is Dr. Chance Lewis, and I want to welcome you tonight for this amazing event. And as we get started for tonight, as I mentioned, my name is Dr. Chance Lewis, and I serve as the Collaborative Director and Professor of Urban Education at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. And in doing tonight's event, it is part of our Urban Education Week. This is a strategic event that I started 10 years ago when I started this center to focus on the positive aspects of what is going on in urban educational settings. So as we look at tonight's event, the title of tonight's event is Keeping It Real, Exploring Black Girlhood through Film and Education. And one of the reasons why I'm most excited about tonight's event, it puts a strategic and intentional focus on Black females and the wonderful things that can be done with this population in urban educational settings. So as we look at tonight's event, and as we start tonight, I want to first thank Ms. Jamika Anderson, who is a doctoral candidate here in our urban education doctoral program, for her amazing work as well. I also want to thank all of the students who are Black females who have participated in the Black Girls Film Camp and will be a focus for tonight's session. And also I want to thank all of the scholars and the staff members and everyone who made tonight's event possible as well. So as we look at tonight's event, I want you to sit back, relax, and really enjoy the conversation and really think about the possibilities of what can be done in urban education. And I look forward to what happens as a result of tonight's events as we move forward in thinking about and opening up more opportunities for Black girls in urban schools. So thank you so much for having me, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Jamika Anderson for tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. I am so excited about tonight, one, because some of these women are scholars that I admire. Some of them have been mentors to me, and you all are in for a treat because they're phenomenal. So very briefly, I'm going to talk to you about the Black Girls Film Camp. I know Dr. Lewis mentioned this platform as being the foundation of some of our conversation. Well, I had the opportunity to actually submit a grant 2 years ago through the work that I've been doing in the Urban Education Collaborative, and that grant got funded. And that grant was for the Black Girls Film Camp. I did not have a clue what I was doing initially. I knew it was going to be a pilot project where I wanted to combine the work I had been doing with critical media literacy and creating a counter space for Black girls and merging film with it, where they can have the opportunity to create counter stories and narratives that depict them and girls like them, and to basically come together and create the space for healing. So in the spring of 2021, we launched the Black Girls Film Camp. It was a partnership with the UNC Charlotte's Film Studies Department, the Women and Girls Research Alliance, who also gave us funding to do this work, the nonprofit I Am Not the Media, and so many collaborators and organizations in the community. For 4 weeks, from May to June 2021, y'all, it was 4 weeks. These girls created their own films. They worked with award-winning film directors, PhD scholars, and also mentors and coaches that are creatives in the field to help them piece together their stories. This camp was targeted for high school girls, where only 10 girls were selected as finalists. They went through interviews, application process, and these girls felt like they won the lottery. They were poured in and showered with gifts, tech devices, ring lights, shirts, bags, and all types of gifts that helped support them to make their films. This film camp combined critical media literacy, technology, and film production to empower these high school girls to create counter narratives through the art of storytelling regarding critical issues that influence their lives and their identity. Special speakers for the camp included celebrity actress Ryan Destiny from the show Grownish and Star, and Academy Award winner Karen Tolliver, and so many more. The films that were created by these teens also just premiered at Mill Valley's Film Festival in California from October 7th to 17th. Their stories are being shared across the world, and 4 of those stories will be shared tonight and serve as the basis of our conversation. So you all are in for a treat. And I'm going to hand it over to Deneen Dixon-Payne, who is also a coordinator for this project. And she's going to introduce our panel and our moderator for tonight.
Thank you, Jamika. So good evening, everyone. Again, I am Deneen Dixon-Payne. And so the esteemed Audre Lorde reminds us that we should be deliberate and afraid of nothing. Tonight's panelists and moderator are deliberate and bold in their pursuit of unapologetically advocating for Black girls. You guys are in for a treat. Our first panelist is Dr. Michelle Meggs, who currently serves as the Executive Director of Women Plus Girls Research Alliance at Charlotte. Her research centers around expanding the authentic voices of marginalized women and girls in academic research. Our next panelist is Dr. Shanika Coleman King, an assistant professor of teachers, schools, and society at the University of Florida. Her research focuses on how to best prepare teachers and teacher candidates to teach with an emphasis on social justice in schools that serve economically disadvantaged children and students of color. Next, we have Dr. Shaquita Richardson, who is the founder of Beyond Achieving LLC and is a self-care coach that works with professional Black women and women of color to balance the priorities in their lives in order to make more space for themselves. Our next panelist is Dr. Annette Teasdale, who is one of our very own and is an assistant professor of curriculum and instruction at Clark Atlanta University. Her research centers on the belief that culturally responsive pedagogy and a curriculum that is accurate, relevant, and appropriate can yield improved student outcomes. Next, we have Dr. Sherelle McArthur. She is an associate professor of education at the University of Georgia. Her research has served to transform and disrupt educational practices for girls of color and marginalized youth. She strives to shape the national conversation on educational justice for girls of color who have been historically underserved. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Taryn Brown is the clinical assistant professor of social foundations and the program director for the schools, society, and policy specialization at the University of Florida. Her scholarship focuses on Black feminism, Black girlhood studies, and Black mothering. Finally, tonight's moderator is our very own Dr. Brittany Anderson, who is an assistant professor of urban education at Charlotte. Her research centers on the lived experiences of gifted Black girls and women with an emphasis on their academic and social emotional needs. Currently, she is involved in curating professional learning opportunities for in-service teachers in urban schools. So without further ado, Dr. Brittany Anderson.
Thank you so much, Deneen, for that introduction and the introduction to our panelists. Welcome everyone to Keeping It Real. I am Brittany Anderson, your moderator for tonight. I am beyond excited to engage with this dynamic panel of activist scholars, practitioners, and filmmakers. For me, this work is both personal and professional. And the most daunting task for tonight is to stay in my lane as the moderator and not jump in. So we'll see what happens with that. We will be framing this work through an intersectional and darkened lens, highlighting varying aspects of identity and development in Black girlhood, something that this panel is well versed in. We plan to provide a space to unpack the complexities in the lived experiences of Black girls and women through film. The panel will provide strategies, anecdotes, their own renderings or ways of knowing and understanding as we discuss some themes of Black girlhood. The first segment of the program addresses the pressures of perfectionism, stereotype threat, and Black superwoman complex. For the first segment, we will watch two films, Transparency and Acceptance, and open the question and answer portion for the panelists. Themes such as family socialization, self-imposed and societal expectations, critical media literacy, and social emotional awareness and the associations of it will be discussed. The first film, Transparency, by Kristen Jackson resonated with me greatly based on my own experiences and explorations of as a gifted Black girl. And I'm delighted for you all to engage and, jot down some notes or associations that you may have with this. And we're also going to open up the chat for questions. And so as you begin to have questions about the content or anything, any of the things that the panelists are mentioning, go ahead and drop it in the chat. Now, we won't get to every question, but we'll probably get to about 3 or 4 as the night goes on. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and roll that first film, Transparency.
Hi, I'm Kristen Jackson, and I am 18 years old. In the Black Girls Film Camp, I learned the importance of community in any industry, especially the film and entertainment industry. I also learned that my self-confidence is a springboard to the cultivation and activation of my talents and gifts that God has given me. The name of my film is Transparency, and it talks about how transparency isn't always as clear as it seems. I hope you enjoy my film.
Right now, I am a senior at Victory Christian Center School. I've been there literally my whole life, and it's a lot of pressure to go to the right school. Where is the money gonna come from? And what am I supposed to be majoring in? And if I know what I'm majoring in, what am I gonna do professionally? And it's like a lot of pressure from the people around to have a mentality where it's like you must know what you're doing at every moment, like just wanting to make everyone proud and to do the best that I can, even though it is a lot with track. We have the state track meet coming up and graduation and exams, so it's a lot crammed in that I have to sort of balance, keep a smile. Even though I'm so tired, the first thing I'm gonna do when I graduate is just sleep. But I just try to balance it all, make sure everyone's happy, and just do the best that I can. It's exhausting to please other people, and I just give, and then I have nothing for myself. And I'm starting to see that even with people who I thought were friends. And I had to just sit there and say, Kristen, you have to choose you. And it's easier said than done. And it's just like reversing years worth of doing it. So it's not going to be like a switch you can flip on, flip off, but it is exhausting. It's time consuming, and you really like lose yourself. And it's like, where is that time for Kristen? Where is that devotion for Kristen? I believe in others like 110%, but like when it comes to myself, I doubt myself a lot. I question, I overthink, and it's sort of frustrating to like, I'll encourage somebody and they'll do well, and then I do something and I can just find what I did wrong. And it's like, I can't even celebrate what I did good. And it's like a lot of pressure. My mom, like, I don't want to cry, but she just gives and gives and gives and gives. And even my grandmother, I think like I've inherited that trait to where you give and then you're so tired to invest in yourself. Just give and give and give and give until you're tapped out. And I'm too young to be tapped out. Like, I'm literally 18 years old and I literally have the rest of my life to live. I just want to just live life instead of doing it for everybody else, because they're living their life. Like, if the people who call on you, I realize like they have memories. I have accolades, but do I have the memories? Do I have the joys? And it's like, man, I let a lot of time pass me by. What's stopping me is me. I allow myself to put others' opinions before mine because I don't think I'm good enough. It sort of stems from childhood. The spotlight has been on other people, and I might have something great to say. I'm overlooked, and so I'll hold it back and let the other people who have the spotlight sort of take over and
sort of be acknowledged. Childhood, I guess, hurts that I've sort of suppressed and buried in my busy schedule. And
So do you keep yourself busy so you don't have to think about it and feel?
yes. The way I want to live my life is free, not concerned about what others think. I want to live to where I do give to others, but not to the point to where I can't give anything to myself. I want to live in the moment.
What a powerful film. And it just really, when I was watching her film, just thinking about all the things, the renderings and the vulnerability that she showcased in these critical reflections, how needed is that, and how I wished I would have had some of these conversations as a youth. And so Kristen is a busy college freshman and was not able to be with us, but we do have our second film's creator here with us, Nia Best, and her film is Acceptance. And I'm going to quickly read her bio. Nia is a teen filmmaker and participated in 2021's Black Girl Film Camp. During this camp, she directed a heartfelt story that many Black girls may connect with about social media, depression, and struggle with self-acceptance. Her film is titled Acceptance, and it's about a Black girl's addiction to social media and how this pushes her towards a mental breakdown. Nia defines Black girlhood as revolutionary. And so as we think about liberatory practices, lean into some of the things that Nia is sharing in her film, Acceptance.
Hi, my name is Nia Best and I'm 17 years old. What I've learned from doing the Black Girls Film Camp is to be authentically true to yourself as well as your story. My film is titled Acceptance and is about how a Black girl's addiction to social media pushes her towards a mental breakdown. I hope you all enjoy my film.
When I was little, life was so simple. I had one friend, I liked her, she liked me, but most importantly, I liked myself. Today is different. I have over 2,000 friends. Half of them I've never even met, but for some reason, their opinion of me matters. How much longer is that gonna take? My face is so fat. Of course I would get a bump today. Maybe I can airbrush my face. I wish my face was even. I hate all of these. I'll just settle with this one. I knew I should have covered the bump more. Are they good enough? Only 50 likes? Ugh. They would like my pictures if I look like Kim K. Maybe I'm not pretty enough. Today is not my day. I'll never look like the girls on my Instagram feed. I should have changed my hairstyle. Is it my eyes? I wish my forehead was smaller. I wish I was prettier. Maybe if my face was skinnier. Why don't they like me? I'll never be good enough for anything.
Hi, Nia. This is Jasmine, calling with the Black Girls Film Camp. We wanted to congratulate you and offer a spot as one of the 10 to participate in the film camp. There are a couple of things that I wanted to go over with you. So if you can give me a call back when you get this message, I would greatly appreciate it.
I got in. Ma, I got accepted.
Thank you so much, Nia, for joining the panel with us tonight. We're so excited to hear about your inspiration for this film. We're also excited to get this panel into these conversations. And because we watched two films, we're going to bring in Nia on the second question. But to the panel, as we were listening to Kristen and listening to some of her negotiations with her identity, also thinking about how the world might be seeing her and the pressure that she was putting on herself. So my question to you all, why do you feel, well, before I get to the question, one of the things that the research and other aspects of scholarship have not, as we think about perfectionism, it's typically been discussed more in the Asian community. Also, when we think about the girls' experiences, it's been around the experiences of white girls and women. But these conversations about perfectionism and how do we talk about those things with Black girls? And so as we are working and mentoring, and those of us who are working with Black girls, why do so many Black girls continue to push themselves to be perfect or suffer from perfectionism? And so I am going to open the floor to our scholar panelists to jump in and just kind of give your ideas about how you see issues of perfectionism manifesting in Black girls, and what are some strategies or approaches that you can think through to share with the attendees. So first, Dr. Meggs.
One of the things that immediately jumped to me was this narrative. I know a narrative that I got growing up being a young Black woman was that you're Black and you're female, so you already have two strikes against you, right? As if who we were, as if the ways in which we entered this world were already problematic, and that we have to, you have to fight, you have to work and you have to be twice as good, right, in order to get half as much, as if the work that we did was already bad and we have to strive even harder. So it didn't matter what we did, it was never going to be good enough. So that I think that this idea that everything that you had to do was perfect, the way you showed up, the way you did your schoolwork, the way you did your hair, the way that you dressed, the way that you showed up in the world always had to be perfect, and that there was no room for mistake. There was no margin of error, that any slight, anything that you did that was off balance, that the consequences were going to be huge, right? And that there was no space for recovery. And I think that feeds into this whole idea of respectability politics and how that falls really hard on Black girls and Black women, that if we don't show up in the world in the way that was acceptable to the majority, that we would never get a chance. And so that falls into this idea that we don't have freedom that we can't trust ourselves, and we can't love ourselves, we can't breathe for ourselves, we can't have joy for ourselves. And I was taking notes as she was talking, that anything that we do for ourselves is unacceptable, that is not acceptable. Everything that we do has to be for others, because we have to carry the race, which isn't fair. And so that's what I got from it. Again, this whole idea, you're Black and you're female, nothing you do is going to be good enough. So yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Meggs. Dr. Brown.
Thank you. As an extension to what Dr. Meggs just offered, it made me think about this space that I often feel both Black women and Black girls sit in, which is this space of performative okayness, right? So even as an extension of what we get from Dr. Meggs around feeling like we exist in this space and we have to be perfect, we also work through spaces not being able to say that we're not okay. And I saw representations of that in both of these young ladies' films, how they tried to trouble that as they talked about their own lived experiences and processing through how that shows up. And so one of the things that it lends me to is disrupting this space that we exist in, which is suggesting that we always say we're okay when we are not. Right? We sit in spaces where a part of the extension of that perfectionism is to not be able to express ourselves, to not be able to be vulnerable, to not be able to cry, right? I even feel myself sometimes when I'm processing, like I don't want to cry. And I've had sister friends that say, sometimes you need to let it out. Like sometimes you really just need to get that out so that you can move, right? And that's that chewing on and disrupting that performative okayness that shows up so much. And in direct response to some of the ways that I saw these young ladies showing that in their films was undergirded in this protection of self. And so in my direct response of thinking about how perfectionism shows up for Black girls is thinking about, how do you protect yourself? What does that look like? How does it manifest, right, on the day-to-day? And it is a day-to-day, because you wake up every day, you face new challenges, new responsibilities, new things that come your way. And you have to figure out, how am I going to protect myself today? And then also in that same vein, how are you going to forgive yourself, right? Because we don't always get it right. But we can make mistakes, which oftentimes in the narrative of the Black girl, it's suggested that we can't make mistakes, right? But we can, and we can learn in those moments. And so extremely moved by both of these young ladies' films thus far.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Oh, both of y'all just hit so many nails on the head. Dr. Richardson.
Yes. Oh, so many different thoughts. Like with the perfectionism piece, there's so much fear that, like, when you drill it down, it often goes down to a fear of being unsafe, unloved, or like not secure. And so we can even have this awareness and know that it's a thing and know that it's hurting us. But it's like, what's the alternative? If I show people that I'm not perfect, if I show people, if they see the mistakes, what is that going to mean? What is that going to do? And so it continues. We keep going and keep doing it, even though we know that it's hurting us, because the alternative is so scary. And like that performative, like it's so much of, I'm seeing this 18-year-old girl who, like, so many of us have those same thoughts and those same experiences. And I see Black women every single day. Our narratives are all so intertwined, and we see it and we know it, but we don't know how to get out of it. We can recognize it, we can say it, we can name it, but it's like, what do we do with it? And that's the part that a lot of times is missing from the conversation. But like, how do you know what to do when all of the messages, every single message says, that's just how it is. That's just what we got to do. That's how we reach whatever levels. But then we do these things and then we don't actually get the reward. We don't actually see the benefit. We don't get whatever, continued accolades or positions or promotions or the ease of life that we've been promised if we make all the right decisions. So then it's like, why the heck am I doing this? So yeah, those are some of the things that came up as I was listening and watching.
Ooh, that hit in so many ways, Dr. Richardson. In my own experiences, like you said, so many of the things that we're talking about are so intertwined, but rarely are we really delving into why this is important for us to talk about, from a young age. Dr. Teasdale.
Yes, thank you. So first, I just really want to congratulate these young women for being so transparent about issues that are rampant in Black girlhood, if you will. One thing that really comes to mind for me is a fascinating text. It's called Becoming. Many of you familiar with our First Lady and her offering after her family experienced the presidency. And one of the things about Michelle Obama is that she's very transparent about her life and her experiences and having to deal with perfectionism, going to an Ivy League school, becoming a lawyer, and aspiring to one of the biggest law firms in Chicago, and then still feeling not enough, right? And so that to me is the crux of the matter here. How do we get to enough? One of the quotes from Michelle Obama that really rings true to me is always stay true to yourself. Sometimes we listen to the beat of other people's drums and we get distracted from the goals that are ahead of us. And what is the ultimate goal? To find peace with yourself and the things that you bring to the table. What other people think about you doesn't matter, but what you think about yourself. And when you come to that piece about your self-worth, then you have achieved the thing that you need to achieve. And so for these young girls, I wish them that peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Teasdale. Dr. MacArthur, and then followed by Dr. Coleman King.
I have a lot of thoughts. Those were beautifully created films, and I see myself so much in both Kristen and Nia. So I thank them like everyone else for their vulnerability. I think one of the things that becomes problematic is that we aren't taught to exist in the fullness of our humanity. We aren't taught, it isn't modeled, and we are indoctrinated to believe that there are some aspects of ourselves that we should continue to fortify, and there are other aspects of ourselves that we should allow to die. But the fullness of who we are never allowed to fully actualize. And so I see Kristen in her film discussing those aspects, right? And it was interesting to me that she said that she's been at this particular Christian academy for her entire schooling experience. And as a Christian myself, we know that even Christ would send the disciples away because he needed his own personal time in isolation. He needed time to pray, to fast, to meditate, and to rest. We know on the seventh day, God rested. But when we don't ensure that we model for our girls that rest is necessary, right? That we teach them that they should always be solely in the service of others, that becomes wildly problematic, right? Because we give them that you can't pour from an empty cup, but we don't tell them, well, what do I do with this cup, right? A fuller aspect of that would mean that we begin to discuss that you drink as you pour. If you're going to continue to put in the level of work, the level of skill, the level of effort, if you've got to be mom or auntie or big sister, or you've got to handle this business and entrepreneurship and all of these things, that it becomes necessary and a priority for you to take care of self, right? And so what we model as moms, as grandmas, as aunties, as educators becomes significant and important. And we can only model it if we are first taking care of ourselves. So that's one thing. And then also in Nia's film, there were so many affirmations, right? And so we know that we process thousands of affirmations each day, and our stream of self-talk in our foundation is our foundation, right? But how do we represent that when we are working with Black girls? If we are constantly talking about how we fall short, man, and I got on the scale this morning, it wasn't what I needed, and I know I need to be going out and working out and walking, and I'm not getting out of the bed and I'm being lazy. What they get to see is a representation of how we have negative self-talk. So it doesn't become confusing or difficult that they begin to take up the practice. The entire front of her film was only her degrading herself, but that comes from a place of watching others do it. So again, we start with how do we tap into the fullness of our humanity, each and every one of us, and then begin to demonstrate that to the people around us. And that is specifically needed and necessary for Black girls, where everything else and everyone else is telling us all the ways that we don't matter. If no one else has the capacity, if no one else has the greatness to hold our greatness, and sometimes that's what it is. Some people just don't have the strength to be able to hold how beautiful, phenomenal, brilliant, and captivating you are. And so if no one else can do it, we have to have the skill to do so. But that requires all of us who are invested in Black girlhood to be able to do our work with ourselves in order to do it with them.
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Coleman King. I'm ready to pass this collection.
Love that. I love that. The videos were just so powerful, so powerful. Couple things that stood out to me in Kristen's is this notion of I'm overlooked. And it resonated so deeply with me because I think about how hard I work. I think about the level of excellence and expectation that I bring to my work. And I can see all of the other mediocrity around me. And yet I'm overlooked, right? And so part of it is thinking about, you know, how high the bar is set for Black women, and that even with all of the things that we're doing and even with all of the accolades, somehow the world doesn't see us. And so what do we need to do for ourselves? How do we make sure that we see each other in that process, right? And that we're not looking for, but also not looking for that outside affirmation, right? In the second video, Nia talks about acceptance versus likes. And how do we accept our calling, accept what we're doing, recognize the excellence that we bring to our work, realizing that the outside world may never validate what it is that we do. But one of the points of connection with what Dr. MacArthur was saying was thinking about how we are, as Black women, how we are complicit in this, right? In how we raise our children and how we raise our daughters, right? In that oftentimes we bring critique as opposed to praise, right? We're always wanting our children, our daughters to fix something as opposed to really having them revel in who they are and allowing them to be who they are. And as a mom of a daughter who is strong-willed, has a very strong sense of self and voice, in allowing that to be and watching all of the pushback that I get in trying to allow her to be who she is and not who society wants her to be. And so I just think about the work that we have to do if we want to cultivate something else in Black girls.
Y'all, I'm having all the feels from these conversations, but I want to bring Nia into the space. Nia, you've heard some of the things that folks have mentioned about your film, and what resonated with them about what you decided to direct and bring the message that you are sending to us. And so Nia, if you would like to share what inspired you to do this films or any of the connections that you made to the panelists.
Okay, so hi. I created this film off of my own personal experience. A couple years ago, I had like a really hard time outside of, social media and whatnot in life. And social media did not make it any better. I was comparing myself to others, and I was, just trying to figure out like why I wasn't where everybody else was and why I wasn't doing as much as, and I eventually had to realize my own self-worth and that, what's for you is for you, one. And, again, what's for you is for you. And in due time, it will come to you. You aren't anybody else. You are you. And you have to be true to yourself. And you have to learn yourself.
And you have to be okay with where you are and learn how to get through it and not have to hold on or pretend to be something else.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing those words of wisdom. And we just applaud you for the steadfast self-awareness that you have to have in order to recognize some of these things at your age and stage, right? And some of these things, and I can speak for myself, I am just figuring out in my 30s. And so because I just did not have that type of mentoring or opportunity. And so we applaud you for this work and the inspiration that you have given to those that are that are after you. And so I know that you all are adding questions to the chat. We'll get to 1 to 2 questions in our next segment, but we're going to move on to segment 2. Where we are talking, and Nia, thank you so much for being part of this panel and sharing your experience. But we are going to be moving into segment 2 titled Reframing Black Girl Identity. And so the vulnerability and the reflections mentioned here are just so powerful from Tahara. And she is here with us. And so she'll be sharing her inspiration after we watch the film. But we are very well aware of the danger of the single story and some of these dominant narratives that are mentioned about Black girls and women. This next segment focuses on how do we reframe that? What are the ways in which we can dismantle the single story and explore counter narratives, and especially in nature? And that's what Tahara is sharing with us. And I cannot express this enough. How do we reclaim Black joy or beginning to explore Black joy? And so it takes a day. Archives her experiences of noticing the little things and embracing her multifaceted identities. And so let's roll that film.
Hi, my name is Tyra Forth and I'm 15 years old. What I've learned the most from being in the Black Girls Film Camp is that anyone can tell a story. The title of my film is It Takes a Day, and it's about what happens if we take the time to pay attention to the little things in life. Thank you, and I hope you like my film.
so thank you for sharing that film with us, Tahara. And we are so excited that you are here with us on tonight. And so we want to start with you first. So we want college freshmen now. And so we want to open the floor to you, and you share with the audience about what inspired you to create this film, and seeing through the eyes of you exploring nature and how that may have resonated with you, and how do we reframe Black girl identity. So go ahead and share with us, Tahara.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. For me, I think during the time that I was making this film, I kept seeing a lot of films that were, the sole idea was, a lot of like the bad things that were going on in the world, like social justice, and those are needed. But I kept seeing a lot of them, and it kind of was like taking a toll on my mental health. And I also tied it to, me being in school and we were online. And so just the toll it took on my mental health, which is being inside, stuck inside, I wanted to tie those two together and make a film that just tells people that there's more to just what we can see online and on our phones. There's more out there. And taking the time to explore those things, I think, can benefit us a lot. Instead of having a single idea that our world is bad because of the people, when everything else about it is, something we should cherish. And I really want to emphasize that with a lot of the imagery I had. I just think it was, a bit different. I want to do something, that we haven't seen, and hopefully make people smile when they watch it. Like they can feel, content that like, okay, and, inspire people to like, okay, maybe I will go out. Maybe I will, see what's around me instead of, like what's on my phone and what I am accustomed to. Even though COVID's like closing out, still, even when it, is over, still take the time to take care of yourself. And I think looking out and exploring is a way of self-care. And I think that is something we truly need, especially as a Black girl, self-care. So, yeah.
I thank you for sharing that. Dr. Coleman King and I have been engaging in work about how do we really begin to move nature, and how do we think about experiential learning and what we do. And so we appreciate you sharing that. And I do want to pass the questions off, and they may want to engage in this as well, but engage with what you said as well. But the question to the panel: how do single narratives of Black girls influence and limit how we see ourselves and each other in the world? And so I am going to pass to Dr. Meggs to explore this question, and also she might also have a question or a comment about what you said to her as well.
Well, I thought the film was just really beautiful, and I liked the way that she just gave herself permission to experience joy, right? She gave herself space just to be a Black girl, right? India Ari has this song called Little Things, right? It's the little things and the joy that they bring. And she gave herself permission to experience and feel joy in ways that I don't think Black girls get a chance to do. There's this pressure for them to be adultified and just not really get a chance to be children. And also to have the opportunity to just experience nature, right? And the ways that nature can really refresh and renew us. Black women in outdoor spaces is not something that we get to see. So it was a really wonderful way and a wonderful opportunity to see a young Black girl experience nature and sunshine and grass and trees, especially in a city where they're bulldozing everything and knocking all the trees down, and our green spaces are being eliminated. And Black folks don't always get a chance to experience those spaces. Also, given that this was made in the midst of a pandemic, and how we had to learn to connect with nature, and in doing so, reconnect with ourselves and who we are and what we need, instead of always looking outward. connecting with nature gave us the opportunity to tap into ourselves and to reconnect with who we are and the things that will help us grow as a people, so that when we are able to come back to one another, we can honor perhaps who we are and learn to honor the humanity in other people.
Yes, Dr. Brown.
I was extremely blown away with this piece. It really hit home because one of the crazy things is I've been most recently connected to Black Girlhood scholars that have been doing very intentional work at looking at the relationship between the body of the Black woman and girl and its connection to space, nature, and land, right? There's a big push towards that. And Tara, you're right in alignment with this scholarship that's pushing us towards thinking more intentionally about what that relationship looks like. It lends me back to the quote in the words from Dr. MacArthur, where she talked about the humanity of us as a people, of us as women, as girls, and considering what it takes to connect to that aspect of our humanity, right? Being able to be in tune with our bodies inside and out. In my thinking about nature, the senses that come into play, right? You were leaning on the tree and touching the tree, right? There was a connection point between you and many aspects that existed outside of yourself. And I really loved the complexity that you offered in that film. And it really resonated with me because I think one of the things that we have to always consider when we're having conversations around girls, particularly Black girls that are very siloed in the ways in which they are perceived in different spaces, is that Black girls are not a monolith, right? We come in many different flavors. We come with long locks, we come with kinky twists, we come with straight hair, we come with a red lip or a purple lip or whatever it might be, right? We show up in many different ways. We are a visual people. And we express ourselves in many different ways. And I appreciated the tap into the space that centers the complexity that is being Black girl, Black woman. And I want to lend from that work, this idea that we see the empowerment in centering that kind of narrative, right? And centering the multiple identities that exist in the realities of girls. We create a space for empowerment, right? We create a space where we humanize, right? And we place that humanity at the center of our praxis. For those of us that are in educational spaces, for those of us that are in community spaces, and for those of us that are mothering the next generation, those legacies that come after us, right? For that humanity that we really truly need to lean into. So I appreciate you, Tahara, for centering that at the core of your film.
Yes, Dr. Richardson.
Yes. Everything that's been said so far. I love that this film really highlighted the importance of play. And so like there is the nature aspect, there's the tactile, the air, all the movement, all those different pieces. And at some point in our upbringing, play became something that was of less value. And it's like, if it doesn't help you reach a goal, now it has to fall off the list. This is a waste of time. And so, and even for people like with sports, you know, if it's not a goal, if it's not competitive, then why are you even doing it? And so we lose that. We have lost a lot of that as we become adults or even just older kids. But it's so important, and that translates to so many different areas. When we talk about self-care, we talk about how we spend our time, play, creativity, that flowing, all of that. And even taking it a step further, so many Black women don't have hobbies, don't have things that aren't attached to work or some type of goal. And kind of tying it back to the whole perfectionism thing, so many of us don't even pursue hobbies because it's like, if I don't know how to do it, if I'm not already perfect at it, I'm not even going to try it and allow myself to figure out something new. And so it just keeps on this cycle of like, I just work, I do this thing, I do things, and it's only things that are to a specific goal or that I can measure somehow. But it's so important. Play is so important for so many reasons, for moving our body, fresh air, just the creativity piece, just to infuse joy in the day. Like those things are extremely valuable. Yes, very much capital. I'm looking at the comments come up too at the same time. But yeah, so like we're not good at things. And to the piece about like single narratives and not being a monolith, like if you're not a specific kind of Black girl, then something, you know, something's off. Like what's wrong with her? And I know for so many of us on the achieving side, it's like there were so many things put upon us. I'm willing to bet several of us heard, why you act white, why you do this, why you do these other kinds of things. If we're not really vocal, or if we're more quiet, it's like, why are you so quiet? What's wrong with you? If you like certain things, certain activities, certain interests, then like it's always something wrong with you, rather than we just like different things. We have different interests, we have different ways of being. But if you don't follow this mold, then we don't know where to put you. We don't know what to do with you. But I think that we are getting closer, getting, a little bit closer, further, same thing, to recognizing that like we are all different. We have some similarities. We have a lot of things that are common because we've been raised in these same systems, but there's so much beauty in how different we can be and how much variety and personality and interest that we can have. So yeah, that's what I'll add.
Thank you. Dr. Teasdale, Dr. MacArthur, and Dr. Coleman-King will flow in that way.
Yes, so I'll be brief here. I just want to lift up what Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie says in her TED Talk about a single story, that, there's stereotypes that are created. And the problem with these stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they're incomplete. And so when we think about Black girlhood and what that means, that means so many wonderful things. When Dahara was talking about self-care, right? How do you get out of a funk, right? We know how to get into one. We're pretty good at that, but how do you get out of a funk? Maybe it is yoga. Maybe it is meditation. Maybe it is connecting with nature. It reminds me of the work of Dr. Stephanie Y. Evans, whose work on Black women in yoga is recommended reading for us all, and perhaps a great pathway for how to get out of a funk. Thank you.
You can go ahead, Dr. MacArthur and Dr. Coleman-King.
Yeah, sorry, I was about to start and then realized I hadn't unmuted myself. And then when you realize you start piggybacking on everybody that's come before. So yeah, and we know that the stereotypes about Black girlhood, about Black womanhood, they continue to haunt society's collective consciousness about who we are and how we are. And so the only way that we begin to disrupt that is by telling genuine stories. And in those genuine stories, that's how we live our everyday lives, right? And so we recognize that Black girls are not a monolith, and we say that theoretically, but the ways in which we apply it has to be in recognizing when we see Black girls and women who are doing things that aren't the things that we do, that it's okay that they do those things. Sometimes we become the most hypercritical and then stand in defense and say, hey, we not a monolith, but then who gets to define what Black girlhood is if me as a Black girl doesn't get to define what it is that I'm interested in, right? Like, you don't get to define it because you're a Black girl, you get to define it for yourself. If we're not a monolith, and we know that we aren't, right? So this is allowing ourselves, getting back to Dr. Richardson's point about hobby and back to the humanity, not only are we in this level of perfectionism, but again, we work and learn and are taught to be in service to everybody else. So our identities begin constructed around our jobs. Our identities begin to be constructed around our boothang. Our identities begin to be constructed around our children. Our identities begin to be constructed around our Greek affiliation, our church affiliation. And then we don't know who we are outside of the role we play around other people. But when nobody's there, what do you like? What do you like? Coming to America? No, I know what I like, but what do you like, right? It becomes that woof, woof, woof. Like, what? Do you like rap? You don't have to if you don't. Like, do you like, what is your thing? What are you into? And so we have to, again, be willing to be the fullness of ourselves. If you don't Black girl like your Black girl's Black girl, that's okay. And I think the more that we show up authentically as ourselves, as Black women, it gives Black girls the right to know that they could come however they choose to come. And then it becomes our job not to police when they come to our spaces, when they come to our classrooms, when they come to our coaching sessions. It becomes our job not to police how they show up and how they choose to represent themselves. Because I can guarantee that each and every one of us has been policed as Black women at some point in time by other Black women. And so we have to get out of that and allow how they dress, how their hair look, what they do, let them have their thing. Because how we define play in double Dutch might not be how they define play in the social media world. Like we a different age, we a different demographic. It's okay that things advance because I didn't play jacks like my mama played jacks. And so, right, like these things just continue to evolve and change, and we have to allow them to evolve and change.
Thank you, Dr. MacArthur. So one of the things that this made me think about is how much stress there is for Black women to just leave the house, right? Which goes back to this notion of perfectionism, right? Like if we're gonna leave the house, we have to be dressed from head to toe. If we're gonna leave the house, our face has to be beat. If we're gonna leave the house, our hair has to be done, right? And it also goes back to what we've been seeing in the media about Black women wearing scarves in public and wearing pajamas in public, right? Everything that we do once we step outside the house is being policed. And so part of why we can't get out to enjoy nature is because we don't know if our hair is done well enough, or we don't want to get our hair dirty, or we don't want to get our outfit dirty, or we don't want to get our sneaks dirty, because we have to uphold this standard, right? And so part of that is what gets in the way. And Tahara's video actually resonated with me very closely as well. It's just so funny how, you know, we think we're going through these individual experiences, and they just reflect so much of what so many Black women experience. Because during the pandemic, you know, I was going through a lot and experiencing a lot, like many people, with family getting ill, and I got sick. And the thing that it drove me out of the house to outside. And as I started doing some of the research, what I found was that neurologically, we need to connect to the earth. Connecting, touching grass. When she placed her hand on the tree, neurologically, our bodies were meant to be in connection with the earth. And so there is a spiritual and physiological impact for being outside and being in connection. And one of the things Brittany, Dr. Anderson mentioned earlier about some of the work that we've been doing together, one of the things we talked about and we figured out as we were embarking on that work was that connecting with nature is a part of our legacy. That is not new to Black women, right? We started this thing, right? In thinking about medicinal plants and how we've survived over generations through all of the oppression and the harsh realities. It is through our connection and our knowledge of the earth. And so we need to reclaim that, right? To say now, who told us that that's not a Black girl thing? It is a Black girl thing. And we need to make sure we're reclaiming those things that belong to us.
I got all the thoughts. I'm going ham in the chat. So this, I know we got to transition, Jamika, and I am going to get to Adrian's question in our next. We have two questions in the chat, but I'm going to get to your question in our next segment because I feel like your question just flows through all three of the segments. And thank you so much for sharing your question in the chat. Tahara, thank you so much for being here with us and causing so much vibrant and engaging conversations. And so thank you so much for being with us on tonight and your inspiring film. And so we are transitioning to our last segment of the night, and it's triumph over trauma. And some of these points we've already touched on, but how do we explore the healing power of Black girl joy? And Jessica's film, Colorblind, is timely as we deal with racial injustice, namely police brutality, how Black girls are being criminalized in classrooms and other spaces. Say her name, gendered pay gaps, battle fatigue, all of the things. And so we are going to watch Jessica's film. titled Colorblind. And Jessica is also one of the teen filmmakers. And she is interested in sharing with us how we can understand the power of our voices. And so we're going to go ahead and roll this clip and just thinking through the innocence of childhood and divided by truth and affliction. So go ahead and roll that clip for us.
Hi, my name is Jessica Johnson. I'm 16 years old, and what I have learned most from the Black Girls Film Camp is that it definitely takes a village to raise a film. There are so many stories that deserve to be told, and it's up to us, young Black women, to build a strong and united team to help cultivate these stories. My film is titled Colorblind, and it's about two best friends brought together by the innocence of childhood and divided by the truth and affliction of life. I hope you enjoy my film.
Innocence. Innocence blinded by the detrimental fact that we will grow with two completely different perspectives of the world. Innocence blinded by the two different worlds we live in, come from. Innocence blinded by me.
Tonight's news at 6, Trayvon Benjamin Martin, an African-American 17-year-old high school student, was shot by a white Community Watch officer in Florida. George Zimmerman, a Sanford, Florida Community Watch captain, called 911 saying that he wanted to approach someone, but Zimmerman was told to not leave his SUV. Zimmerman admits he shot Martin and claims of self-defense. More on this disturbing story of Trayvon Martin's death at 6. Today, we bring you breaking news unfolding in Minneapolis, Minnesota, after a 911 call comes in from a convenience store informing police that George Floyd had purchased cigarettes using a counterfeit $20 bill. 17 minutes after the first patrol car arrives, Minneapolis police arrest 46-year-old George Floyd. After Officer Derek Chauvin with badge number 1087 showed up, he took it upon himself to kneel down on the neck of George Floyd. This disturbing image was captured by 17-year-old Darnella Frazier. So far, experts say that
stuff like this happens all the time.
No, it doesn't. It's a man being murdered. You're worried about some outfit that doesn't even matter.
It has nothing to do with me. Why should I care?
That's the problem.
My friend once told me she was colorblind, but if you don't see color, you'll see the pattern. 500 years seems like a while ago, but yet I still hear the cry of my ancestors every day. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Begging repeatedly for air. The officers involved in George Floyd's death have yet to be charged and convicted of the crime involving Mr. Floyd. Later tonight at 6, more on the tragic event of George Floyd's death.
They don't see who we are. They only see our color. That could be my dad with a police officer's knee in his neck.
James Baldwin once said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." My friend once told me she was colorblind. Maybe she's just blind.
Jessica, thank you so much for sharing this powerful film with us. And you hit so many things on the head. And so we are so excited that you are here. The scholars are so excited to engage with you about your film. And so I am going to ask for you to share briefly what inspired you about this film, and like what were some of the things that hit hard to you as you were engaging in this film?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I just want to say I've been really enjoying all of the conversations. Like I've been writing down notes and stuff. But I would say, so what inspired me for this film was, this was actually based off of a true story between me and my best friend, who was white. And you can kind of see like how we kind of grew up together in the film, and that was very much so accurate. She used to live actually right across the street from me, so we were very active together. We always played with our dolls. And kind of like all of the things that happened with Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, after everything erupted, on top of being in COVID and kind of like feeling captive, it kind of like put a really big strain on our relationship, being that a lot of her views, me finally realizing that a lot of her views were not the same as mine. And being 16, I mean, that happens all of the time. So I'm not the first person. My mom's been through it, my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents, everybody's been through it. And I think one of the main things that hit home or really hit hard for me was that it was happening at such a young age. The fact that I was 16 at that time, and actually 15 at that time, and kind of like we've been best friends for forever. So I think a lot of times, me growing up in that atmospheres that I did grow up in, I went to a predominantly white elementary school. I live in a predominantly white neighborhood. My best friend was Caucasian. So it was kind of like, I had my identity. I think as growing up, you kind of identify with what you're surrounded by. And so I think that my identity was very much so influenced by her being my best friend in the other environments I was engulfed in. And so in the film, I think that really inspired me, just because it was kind of growing out of that naivete and realizing that you really have to identify yourself as your own. And as a Black girl, I think that never really hit for me because I was always surrounded by those of opposite races and stuff. And so I think that that kind of was like the snapping point. And I think another thing that was really, I don't want to say hard, but it was kind of emotional while developing this film, was that because my identity was kind of like, it was like a culture shock at that point in my life. And I think that a lot of times, like, we in society are grown to think that just because these things happen a lot, and these instances with racial unrest and criminalization, I'm sorry, of African Americans, we're supposed to be used to seeing those things. And so the fact that I was so affected by it at that age, and it was kind of her reaction to me being affected by that really made it even worse. And so I think this film was really a, I don't know, like a therapy session for me, being that I do identify a lot with creative routes and creative sources of expression. And so I think that film really was, that hit home for me. And I've kind of just grown from then and now. Like, I've grown a lot in just how I view myself and how I view the instances that happen around me and how I interact with my peers, and just all of those things that happen with growing out of your naivete.
Wow, there's just so much right there. Y'all, really needed a part 2 and a part 3 for tonight, because there's just so much here that we could talk through. And so for my panelists, if we could keep it at about a minute to a minute and a half for your responses to Jessica's film and to this question. So many Black girls who experience trauma are criminalized instead of giving appropriate support. How can the community better serve and support Black girls who have experienced trauma? And Joshua, this goes along with your question that you had in the chat. And so I'm going to open the floor, Dr. Meggs.
I think one of the things that we can do is return to this African concept of Ubuntu. I am because we are because I am, right? And I think that that helps us to draw connections to our own humanity and shows that our lives are inextricably intertwined with one another, right? Which is why when we witness these things, it impacts us so deeply, right? I didn't know Trayvon Martin. I didn't know George Floyd, didn't know Breonna Taylor, but I know them, right? Because I am them and they are me. And because of that, I am impacted, right? Because they became ancestors before their time. They should have not have left when they did, right? And so that is how we can support young Black girls, is with this understanding of Ubuntu, that we are all connected. What happens to one can happen to all. And I think if we connect on that level and help us to see each other's humanity, see each other's gifts, and even see each other's fault, and speak to one another in love, so that when we talk to each other, we never leave each other damaged from a conversation. I really do believe in that. And if we walk that road, I think that is one of the ways that we can help each other. And even if we bring our brothers along, right, because we can't exclude them, right, bring them to the table with that conversation, that we never leave the table hurt from an encounter, and that we're all connected. So I'll leave that there.
Dr. Brown, followed by Dr. Richardson.
Yes, as an extension to that connection piece is considering spaces like this, right? I want to give a shout out again to the Black Girls Film Camp and this great initiative, right, that has these girls really tackling and chewing on some of these very real lived experiences, right, at such a young age, and disrupting, right, and agitating, right? I always say, let's agitate, when we go into spaces, and these young girls are doing just that. And it's in the collectiveness of spaces like this that you feel that fullness, right? I have been so blessed. In the last week, I've been in like 3 different spaces, all Black women, just dynamic, right? And I just feel so full coming out of these meetups because I feel so energized, right? I feel that fullness, and I feel the possibilities that come when I leave spaces surrounded by such dynamic thought and critical consciousness and engagement, and looking for opportunities for our Black girls to be tied to that, thinking about our mentoring relationships, thinking about opportunities to reach out, right? Get into your community spaces and find opportunities to connect with those around you. Because I remember the Black woman that was there for me when I came up, right? So figure out how you can then be the Black woman that does that for someone else. And I leave with this question that I pull from the TV series Lovecraft Country, which was very well done on HBO. And in that series, I believe it was episode 3, but the question was asked, who would you be if you were uninterrupted? And that is what we envision for our Black girls. Who could they be if they were uninterrupted? And that's the type of space we need to continue to build on. That's what your films have done for me this evening. And I'm just so very excited about the continuation and what I know Black Girls Film Camp will continue to do for Black girls.
And just building on that, just like creating space for Black girls and Black women to be able to be open and vulnerable and to say, like, I don't understand this. I don't know what's going on. Because so much of it like, we feel these things, we experience these things, but we don't have language oftentimes. We don't know what we're looking at. We don't know what we're looking for ourselves. And then when we see it in someone else, we're like, I just thought she was, having a bad day. And, so it's just really allowing just the space to just try to figure it out together, because the research isn't doing it. Like, it don't know what it looks like for us. It's not telling us, y'all are doing that work so great. Thank you. Let's go. But like, in the mass, it's not done. We don't know oftentimes what anxiety and depression looks like for Black women. Like we can feel it, we can now recognize some of the signs, but there's not enough information out there for the masses to be able to say, my sister's struggling. I'm struggling. There's nothing wrong with me, but I'm struggling. So that's a part of it. We got a minute. I'll leave it there. Yeah.
That was powerful what you left us with, Dr. We'll leave it there. Dr. Teasdale, Dr. MacArthur, and Dr. Coleman King.
Yes. So a book that changed my life is Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. And that book really talks about how we internalize oppression, right? And how our feelings about ourselves are driven by all of these things. It's woven into every one of the films we talked about tonight, right? The things that we hear, the voices that inform us. And I want to lift up just one quote from my sister, Toni Morrison. And this is a guiding lens, a guiding philosophy for me. Beloved, you are my sister. You are my daughter. You are my face. You are me. Thank you.
I think we need to hold each other in love and the fullness of love. And that might not necessarily be the love that we extend to ourselves, but it is the love that we desire. And so when we start talking about how we hold our girls in love, how as a community we hold our girls in love, let's consider the ways that people approach us that we don't like. Nobody likes to be picked apart. Nobody likes to be nagged. Nobody likes to be criticalized, right? Critiqued. And yet when we approach Black girls, our children, our youth, oftentimes we say that we're loving them, but what we're doing is we're tearing them apart. We say that we're loving them, but what we're doing is we're bullying them. We say that we're loving them, but we're not listening to them. We're not acknowledging who they are. We aren't seeing them for who they are. We are projecting onto them who we want for them to be in some effort to save our family, save the neighborhood, save the community, be better than me, be stronger. How about we just show up and love them? And I think that creating space, which is what Dr. Richardson and Dr. Brown was talking, how do we create these spaces for Black girls? I think that it starts in the one-on-one opportunities that we have with them every day. I think that these collectives are phenomenal and great, and we all are doing that work individually, but what happens when we just one-on-one with a girl? How are they interacting with us? That's a space that's filled with love and fills them with love when they exit. When we jumped on this call before everybody else came on, everybody came in shouting at everybody, come on lips, come on purple, come on red, come on glasses, come on hair, come on locks, come on outfit. This is the way, and everybody was like, ooh, this makes me feel so great. I just want to do this every day. This is the way when Black girls come into our space, we need to approach them. But we say, why you got that bonnet on? Ooh, why these leggings? These leggings are see-through. You ain't got no bra on with that. We don't give them what we know fills our hearts with joy. So if we just could just sit in that loving and that joy space and give everybody those good feels every time they with us, how much better we could just move and be and flow as a society if we were just loving each other up every single time people enter and exit our space.
Yes. So that's making me think about if we stop trying to be perfect ourselves, then we can stop to really see other people, right? We're so caught up in what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish and trying to stave off criticism, right? That sometimes we can't be in the moment with each other and really see each other, right? And so I'm reflecting on these beautiful young ladies and the work that they've done, their sheer brilliance.
Yes.
I mean, we talk about, the accolades of the folks on the panel, And I'm looking and it's been mentioned by other panelists, when I was their age, I did not have the language, the capacity to analyze and critique my experience in the way that they have, and they've done it. And so I'm thinking like, what is the potential for their future, right? What changes are they going to be able to make? And so I am just encouraged and full, and I hope that each of the young ladies see themselves through our eyes, right? Not looking to us as external validation, but recognizing just how amazing and brilliant you all are and how much you have to contribute. And as was said before, if we could just stop for a moment and acknowledge that, right? And not just on a panel for Black girls, but in how we're engaging on a daily basis.
And that's the way we do it. That's the way we do it. And so I want to give time for Adrian's question. Just if I could just get one response, one response or less than that. Where do you think the notion that it is better to be busy than feel comes from? How do we on a large scale normalize the need to express pain and emotions, seek help, and provide a safe space for Black girls of all ages to navigate the pressures of life? Anybody want to take that on?
Busyness was the numb. Busyness was the way that we were able to numb ourselves from the pain that we were enduring: racism, sexism, ageism, watching our family members be murdered. We figured if we were busy, we could numb the pain. And that's how we were able to push through and make it and show that we weren't being impacted. It's not that we weren't being impacted. We had to continue to push and to live. And that is what we pass on, I think, to our daughters. In order to get through, you just have to push past it. You can't acknowledge it, right? You have to keep going. And that's not how to live, because our continuing to swallow the pain and to swallow what we've been feeling is what's actually killing us. And I think that's what's manifesting in dis-ease, because we are not at ease, because we're not comfortable expressing what we're feeling.
Y'all, I want to invite our three team panelists back to the space. And we've been singing your praises all night, but we just want to collectively thank you for your films. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your brilliance. Thank you for how you're going to shake this world up. And we're going to be right there beside you, egging you on and also moving the work forward. And so we're just so thankful for you. My heart is so full. Y'all gonna get onto this Peloton ride, Beyonce ride for tonight, and just go in. And so again, I'm just thankful to all the panelists for your time, for your work, for your authenticity, and just the very nature of who you are. And so again, just the wisdom. And I want to close this out. And again, y'all know I'm gonna contact you about some things because there's just so much that was said here tonight. And just leaving with the point of how do we actively center liberation in whatever we do? Because that is how we get that ease that Dr. Meggs mentioned to us. It can be contentious, but how do we actively center that liberation in what we do? And so I am going to close out our panel and pass the baton to Jamika, who's going to talk through what's coming next for Black Girl Film Camp. And yes, and if Dr. MacArthur mentioned, if the panelists would like to share their email or our contact information in the chat, go ahead and drop that there. And Jamika, I'm going to pass it to you.
All right, so I am thanking all of you all. This was a phenomenal time. I learned so much. I'm always learning when these women speak. So Black Girls Film Camp, we're doing it again. We're doing it in 2022. And guess what? The applications are opening December 15th. So if you know a Black girl that needs to be in spaces such as this, please share that information. You can follow us at Black Girls Film Camp on Instagram to stay in touch, or go to our website, www.blackgirls.filmcamp.org. There's opportunities to get involved as well. You can
hey, join our planning team if you want to volunteer. You can also become a mentor to some of these girls. So there's so many ways you can get involved. Just follow us online or contact us via the website. But I'm going to turn it over to Sierra Davis, who is the finance coordinator for this camp, and she's going to tell you ways that you can support and give.
Hi guys, this was amazing. Let me just say that I have thoroughly enjoyed myself. I'm so glad that I got to attend tonight. But just really quickly, as Shamika said, if you would like to participate in any way, please just send us a message or visit our website. So you can message us at our Instagram, our Facebook, or just drop us a message through our website. Also, if you would like to donate, we are accepting donations at www.blackgirlsfilmcamp.com or .org. You can make your payments. There's a donate button at the top of the website, and we accept payments via Cash App or PayPal. So yes, again, amazing young ladies, you did a great job. Thoroughly enjoyed the panel, and that is all for us.